going to be fairly short. Oh, look at all the dead space over my head. Let's bring this down. There we go. That's better. Keep this short. So yesterday, a few people were asking me about whether narcissists are conscious of what it is that they're doing and whether they have the capacity to introspect. The consensus, generally speaking, is that narcissists have a diminished capacity to self-reflect and to engage in introspection. So then you're left with the question, well, does that mean they know what they're doing or not? I think the simplest answer to this is it's not a binary situation. It's not a case of being able to say there is an absolute line here. They either absolutely know 100% what it is that they're doing, or they have no idea of what it is that they're doing at all. There's just nothing in between the two. So what we have to watch out for is this drive within us for simple solutions to very, very complicated questions. You want to know, did they know they were doing it, or did they not know they were doing it? If they knew they were doing it, then they're an evil, conscious perpetrator of wrongdoing. If they don't know that they're doing it, then that means they're an innocent victim of trauma that just needs to be loved better and just needs some therapy, and then everything will be okay. I don't think you can afford, with such a complicated subject, to split into two such extremes. The truth is somewhere in between the two. Yes, probably they're traumatized, and probably a lot of the defenses of narcissistic personality disorder are there to keep at bay a painful and unpleasant and chaotic childhood environment that they just weren't equipped to deal with. Is it possible that all of that is true and that they're consciously engaging in wrongdoing and that they're conscious that what they're doing to the target is hurting them? I think both can be true. What is the evidence that they have a diminished capacity to self-reflect? So people say, well, narcissists don't have the ability to self-reflect. What they've heard is from clinicians who've said that the clients they've observed seem to have an inability to self-reflect. And I would say, let's not be naive. Just because my client doesn't seem to have an ability to self-reflect, I shouldn't conflate that with an unwillingness to self-reflect. So if I'm a clinician and it's a therapeutic context and I'm working with a client who has a personality disorder, and I ask them a question that requires self-reflection and they deflect it and say, well, I can't do that, do I just naively accept that they can't do it? Or do I put a question mark over it and say maybe they don't want to do it? So I would say there is awareness. We can't really say that they have no ability to introspect or to self-reflect because, well, if you think in very, very simple terms, so come with me for a moment in your imagination to a place where we create a human being who has zero capacity for introspection and zero capacity for self-reflection. What would that person's behavior look like? Would they be comatose? Would they be able to follow a simple task like go to the supermarket and buy milk? If you have zero introspection, zero capacity for self-reflection, do you have any self-concept at all? Would it be the equivalent of taking extremely high doses of psychedelics where there's no conscious sense of an ego and there's just information just rushing in and overwhelming your senses? So the idea that they have no capacity for self-reflection is nonsensical. The idea that they have a diminished capacity for self-reflection, I think, is probably conflated with the idea that they just don't want to answer those types of questions. How do we know that they're conscious of what they're doing? Well, the single inventory narcissism score that was developed in 2014 from the University of Michigan shows us that if you can walk up to people and say, to what extent do you agree with the statement, I am a narcissist, brackets, where narcissist means, I can't remember, egotistical, self-absorbed and vain. And they answer on a scale of 1 to 7. And then you take those answers and you take those people, and the people who scored very highly for self assessment for narcissism, when they do a longer, more complicated test for narcissism, it correlates very positively. So they are aware. They are aware of who they are. They are aware of what they're doing. Final point on this issue, we know when you put narcissistic personality disordered individuals in different contexts, they behave differently. Yes, they have an impulse control issue, but they can switch abuse and abusive behavior on and off, depending on who's watching, depending on which medium. You know, if it's coming via text or a written letter, where you could show that to somebody else, all of a sudden they're sweet and nice as pie. If you're in a conversation with them and you put a dictaphone down on the table and say, right, we're going to record this conversation, and they switch styles, then doesn't that indicate conscious control of the behavior? So they do have a sense of self. They can self-reflect. They're perfectly capable of introspection. They're just choosing to behave badly. So then you would come back to the beginning of what I said, and you would say, well, then we should be in the camp that says there's no mental health issue here. They're not a victim of any kind of trauma. These are just bad people. And you wouldn't be particularly wild or fringe for saying that. There's many clinicians who are saying that. There's many clinicians who are saying, honestly, this doesn't qualify as a personality disorder. We may see within the next 10 years the idea of narcissistic personality disorder being kicked out. It's already been suggested. It was first suggested before the publishing of the DSM-5, not the updated edition, but the first DSM-5 edition in 2012. That was the suggestion that was made. This doesn't qualify as a personality disorder. These are just bad people doing bad things. Where I stand on that is, I would say, whilst there's probably a significant genetic component to narcissistic personality disorder, it's probably learned. And when we say it's learned through trauma, we then have to be careful by what we're saying when we say trauma. If you spoil a child, can you include that in your idea of what trauma is? If you objectify the child by telling them they're amazing and wonderful for things that are perfectly normal, would you class that as trauma? Would you class that as abuse? I don't know whether I would. I would say it's certainly not good for the child's development into a young adult. Is it traumatic? It's unhelpful. It's going to stop them from developing a proper ego, a proper sense of self in the world. It's going to lead them into delusion. What I'm saying is, don't fall into wanting to have it be one camp or the other camp. The other thing to consider is, if you are leaning heavily into the camp of saying, oh, they're just poor little innocent victims, it's hashtag mental health, let's be as compassionate as we possibly can. The problem with that is that can then lead you to the conclusion, I should stick around because they're a victim. I should help them because they're a victim. And I think that's a dreadful mistake. If you can be coerced into a role, an unconscious role within a relationship, that's very, very dangerous for you. So if you imagine they show up as a child who is a victim, your natural unconscious spontaneous response in terms of your role is to show up as a parent and a rescuer. Child, victim, parent, rescuer, and you're now being covertly coerced into parent rescuer role. You'll know that this has happened when you have the experience of trying to leave the person with narcissistic personality disorder and finding that you're struggling with overwhelming feelings of guilt, as though you were abandoning a child. Whose coordinates are they? They're not yours. That's the narcissist's coordinates. They want you to think of them as an innocent child who just experienced so much pain in childhood, and if only you could come along and be a good mother, a good father, a good savior, and come and rescue them, everything will be okay. It's not a very adult way of thinking about relationships, though, is it? It's not an adult-to-adult, honest, open communication that respects the sovereignty of everybody involved, is it? So if that's not your idea of how relationships work, where are you getting that from? When we talk about the shared fantasy space, and when we talk about the narcissistic matrix, I don't want you to think of it as just some cutesy, surface level live action role play that you're engaging in with another person, a sort of ongoing theatre or reality TV show that you're actually living. Think of it more as a mental invasion, a form of long-term total brainwashing, of submerging you into a virtual reality space where you start to feel feelings that are not your feelings, where you start to think thinks that are not your thinkings. That's the other person's thinkings. They're the other person's thoughts, the other person's coordinates for reality. It's extraordinarily invasive, and that is what makes it so hard to leave. And these are the things that make it so hard to recover from, because you've imbibed a poisonous reality. And now you're living that. You've imbibed a poisonous personality. In order to survive that poisonous personality, in order to survive that poisonous reality, you've created a whole other persona. So I learned about this through talking to Mark Vicente and his experiences with cults and recovery from cults through cult psychology. And he said the established consensus within cult psychology is, in order to endure and survive a cult, you develop a cult persona. And I think this is no less true in narcissistic abuse. It's the same thing. You have to develop a cult persona to survive the lunatic pathological coordinates of the simulated reality, the virtual reality of the cult that you find yourself in. For us, in this scenario, it is, of course, a cult of one person. So you have to be very, very careful as you go into the cult and you go into the brainwashing, and time passes, you start feeling feelings that are not from you. You start thinking thoughts that are not from you. The narcissist is a victim and a child. And I am a parent to the narcissist. No, you're not. Gross, weird. What's all with the emotional incest? I've done it. It's not, no judgment to you. I've done the same thing, but think about it. It's gross. It's weird. That's a child, and you're a parent who's going to rescue them. So they're the child victim. You're the parent rescuer. And this is the trap. This is the trap. This is where we get stuck. And it's very, very hard to get out from until you start deliberately looking at and unpacking these unconscious coordinates, because you'll feel them. So then you have to sit with a therapist or a coach who understands these principles very, very well and say to them, I had the strong, overwhelming urge to contact my ex today. And they will say, and what came up for you when you had that urge? What did that urge feel like? Well, I was sat there and I imagined them vividly. And I just imagined them on their own, by the side of the road, in the rain, slow motion rain, while sad Korean drama music played in the background and it faded to black and white. You know, like those adverts for charities with the puppies and the kittens, and they're like, oh, send us money. Right now, there is a puppy in the rain, and if you don't send us $5, we're going to leave that puppy in the rain. That kind of a thing. So you're tricking yourself. You're propagandizing yourself. It's not really you that's doing it. In imbibing this personality and imbibing this reality, you now have an introjected, internalized version of the narcissistic abuser, and it's operating even if you're not in contact with them. It's continuing to give you messages. It's continuing to coerce your behavior. So it's tricking you. It's saying, oh, they can't survive without you. Wouldn't hurt to just check in on them. Just a little text, a little phone call, just drop by, make sure that they have changed their underpants today. It's weird, and it's not coming from you. It's coming from them. If it's hyper sentimentalized, if it's rooted in emotional incest, if everything is very dramatic and has a film-like quality, if it's all kind of got the frequency of gossip and drama, it's not coming from you. It's coming from them. It's called the highly dramatic spectrum of personality disorders for a reason. And you should remember that. That's it. I'm going to take some questions. Please make your questions one sentence long and end in a question mark. That would make me That would make me very happy. Bubus the Menus says, you ain't no damn therapist. You ain't no, but the emphasis was on damn therapist. You ain't no damn therapist. That's right, Bubus. That's right. That's correcty. Respect for all that you do in educating others. Love and support from DC, USA. Thank you, Dancing Lobster. You're a lobster. Does it work to troll the introject, same like you would do with the others from the superego? Yes, you can. It's the the superego injunctions are introject, so you can recognize, you can resist and change the messages from the introject. Yes. Why is crucial flow research says, why is always the other person the narcissist? Is not always the other person the narcissist. If you are the narcissist make of, have of, do of thing, then is you is narcissist. Or maybe is you and also other person at same time. It can happen. Could be both. I am not no. Lady Mama says, why do we forget the abuse? It's part of the PTSD response to the trauma of the abuse is you start to dissociate. And yeah, you'll forget many incidents. It's very common to forget the incidents. It's kind of a way of surviving the horror of what you're going through. Hello, how do I link this so my son can watch later? Oh, it will upload when we finish in about 5 minutes, and then it'll be available to watch. How is this different from borderline PD? We only have 5 minutes left. Srivat, you can Google the differences between narcissistic personality disorder and borderline personality disorder. I can talk about it, but it would take 25 to 30 minutes. I can't, I won't give you a summarized synopsis. Why? Because I don't think that's good. I don't think that's good for you. If you really want to know the specific subtle differences, you're going to have to take some time out and study it. So I could do a 30-minute thing, but I can't do that right now. You says, your views are profound. Thank you. Thank you for the help. It has me self-reflecting on my behavior as a BPD, and it feels like I'm sinking into vulnerable MPD, and I want to change. I wish you well. Jeremiah says, I hope you're well, man. I am. Thank you. Jordan says, how do you know if you're a narcissist? There are narcissism tests that you can do online. Typically, if you're worried that you might be a narcissist, that's usually an indication that you probably are not going to score highly for having narcissistic personality disorder. Early Easy Russian Lesson says, why do all narcissists in the US use the phrase, I kid you not? I don't know. I don't know that that's true. Let's go to the most updated ones. I'm going to have to go soon, folks. Can you hear me okay? Can you see me okay? Is the signal strong? I'm in a new place. Always helps to know. My son is in a child narcissist relationship. She won't get out of bed. What can he do? I'm not really sure what that means. I don't know what a child narcissist relationship is. And I don't know what she won't get out of bed means. Obviously, I know what it means when a person won't get out of bed, but I don't know what the implication for that is for her mental health issues. Preferring not to comment. Absence of data, really couldn't say. So sorry about that, NC. What if you work 5 feet away from them? Yes. Do you agree narcissists adapt behaviors we may call clearly pathetic, visibly very stupid? Trying to guess what you're meaning here. There are things called that I would refer to as ostentatious displays of vulnerability, where they're deliberately trying to make themselves look incompetent and pathetic in front of you to evoke strong feelings of desire to protect and to help them. Could you explain why you think that casual sex is unhealthy? No. I'm doing a talk on narcissism. I know contacting her would not be healthy, but I really want her to contact me. Why? The narcissistic fantasy is still operating, and the introject of her is still running inside of you. So if it feels like a very, very anxious, almost like a drug addict type of a feeling, that's an indication that the introject is still at work and the narcissistic fantasy is still running, it's still in operation. So these are feelings that are not your feelings. These are thoughts that are not your thoughts. These are coming from the other person. So they want you to believe that you crave them. They want you to believe that they're the most important thing in your life. So a lot of these thoughts and feelings, they're actually coming from them. Yes, the signal is strong. Thank you for all that you do. Thank you, Heidi. That helps me. Great live, says Flower Power. Thank you very much. Covert ASPD, NPD combo, more dangerous to society or not? Yeah, you will get psychopathic and narcissistic tendencies showing up in the same person. There's frequent comorbidity. If it's less visible, then yes, typically it would be less dangerous because you might not realize the intentions and the capabilities of the person until it's too late. What is an introject? When you internalize a person, in simple terms, if you have an introject. If you watch a lot of my videos, you will have an introject of me. So you can internalize a person, create an avatar of them, and they will keep talking to you, or you can deliberately talk to them if you want to. If the relationship was abusive and the power dynamic was very asymmetric and very, very vertical with them hanging over you, it will talk to you whether you want them to or not. It will be intrusive. It will just come into your daily thoughts because such was the nature of the invasive communication when you were in a traumatic relationship with them. So an introject is, in simple terms, an internalized avatar that you've created of a person. If the relationship was abusive, that avatar will talk to you and send you messages and signals whether you desire it or not. I'll take one more question and then we shall wrap this up. Looking for these little question marks. Thank you for the explanation of introject. You're very welcome, Heidi. No problem at all. I definitely need glasses. Is diagnosing someone else just as valid as self-diagnosing NPD? I don't know. I'm not a clinician, so I can't diagnose anybody with NPD. So and even if I were a clinician, you can't diagnose yourself. Is the difference just the acceptance, rejection of guilt? No. No, I don't know where you've got that from. Is diagnosing someone else just as valid as self-diagnosing NPD? I need help with this. I'm not sure what you mean, Captain Frisbee. I hope you know what you mean. Is diagnosing someone else as valid, I'm not sure what valid means here, as self-diagnosing NPD? You can't do that. You can't self-diagnose NPD. Only clinicians can diagnose narcissistic personality disorder under clinical conditions. And then you ask, is the difference just the acceptance, rejection of guilt? No, I think you've built, I think you're empirically building one false premise on top of another, and then the tower you're building is like falling over. That probably needs a rethink. Like, start again, try and simplify the concept that you're driving towards, and the quality of the questions you ask. Once you've set your objective, like, what is it I'm really trying to ask here? Then ask better and better and clearer questions of yourself, of what it is you're driving towards. And once you've gone through this questioning exercise and you're asking yourself these questions with a desire for greater and greater clarity of what you're asking, typically Like 90% of the time, the answer will become apparent to you. As it is, I'm not really sure what you're asking. Do you think enmeshment plays a large role in narcissistic relationships? Well, so the model that I'm working from goes beyond enmeshment. This is beyond enmeshment, fusing and merging. I'm claiming that you are not just enmeshed, you are completely submerged in somebody else's delusional fantasy version of themselves and of reality. This is Alice in Wonderland. This is The Matrix, the movie The Matrix. This is you're living somebody else's film plot. They're hacky, crappy, poorly written. You know, like when I don't know, like a 12-year-old writes like an action movie and they think it's awesome, but as an adult, you look at it and you go, oh, it's a bit derivative of, it's all the Terminator. This is all just the Terminator, just with different character names. That's the life you're living. It's a hack version of reality, and you're totally submerged in it. They are the director, they're the editor, they're the main star, they're also the producer, they're also the funder of it, so they have the final say on what gets left in and what gets left out. We're just bit parts, and we are evidently replaceable. So absolutely, enmeshment is a part of it, but upstream of enmeshment is a total submersion into somebody else's fantasy world. Okay, that is 26 minutes and 52 seconds. I will stop there. I will be back on later today. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you very much for your time and for your attention. And I look forward to speaking to you again very soon. Thank you.